Unspoken Issues.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unspoken Issues podcast. We are continuing our journey through the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie adaptations. And yes, we have hit the dark times. Chris Armstrong's over there. I'm Jesse Starcher. We are going to be talking about TMNT III, the what some people consider
erroneously called Turtles in Time.
Yes, Turtles in Time. It is a black mark, and I think the worst film of all of the Turtles movies.
The term cinematic abortion gets thrown around too often, perhaps, but sometimes it's apt.
This is a tough one.
It's not that bad. It is not a good movie.
No, it is not. It's known as being the worst. There are a couple standout things that happen in the film that we'll probably talk about here as we go through the adaptation. One of the things I was hoping for was that maybe the adaptation would save it a little bit. Maybe it would actually make it more palatable. When you look at the film side of things and compare it to the comic book side of things, there are some things that the comic saves it from. Mm-hmm. Specifically horrible visual effects and animatronics. So
and sound effects and
yeah, let's get into discussing our history with the film. I'll start out. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. It released March 19th of 1993. You know, it was 91 when our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Secret of the Ooze came out, right?
I believe so, yeah.
I think it was 91. So we're only a couple years after that. This is a movie that I don't remember seeing any marketing for. And I don't know why. I've talked to you many times where I've told you about there was this kind of black spot for me, like right after 93 up until 96, 97, where we moved out to the country and we only had an antenna. So I would assume that this is going to be marketed Saturday mornings.
Yeah, I would think that's where you would see most of. You're probably not advertising this on Friends or
right.
Seinfeld. Friends wouldn't have been around yet, but
I was watching Seinfeld on our NBC station, and it was going into syndication at like 5:00. I would watch it, but I can remember because it was like the one channel that I could pick up in my bedroom, and that was it. Saturday mornings at that point were a situation where they had got rid of cartoons. NBC had got rid of cartoons on NBC. They were doing
the Saved by the Bell stuff.
Yeah, right, dude. That was
hang time.
You got it. That was what was going on at that point. I didn't see any marketing for this thing at all. And I don't know if it would have sold it to me, but I could tell you that if somebody would have came up to me and said, "Hey, Jesse, just be aware that in a few months, a new Turtles movie is going to be dropping and it's going to involve time travel." And I would have been like, "Are you kidding me? When is this happening?" This should have been something that made me go into the theater and watch. But again, somehow the movie flies under my radar.
A blessing in disguise.
Fast forward in September of 1996, I'd graduated high school and started my first year at college. Me and my roommate, we'd been friends since 8th grade. That was kind of a good thing. We knew each other.
Cool.
We went into school together at the same space and decided, okay, well, let's room together. So we were really good friends. And one of the things we loved, both of us were kind of, me more than him, people who love surround sound. You know, we were getting into, I want to say cinephile. That's probably not the right word. You wanted to get a home theater system, and we wanted to be able to watch movies in our dorm room with a surround sound system. I remember specifically he brought 2 subwoofers out of the back of his car so we could have a subwoofer in there. We hooked that all up to a VCR, and the way we kind of probably broke it in with was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. I had somehow acquired the
ID4 was out by this time. So maybe it wasn't on video yet.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. When I went to college, one of the craziest selling points to me was they had a channel and they would somehow get films before they were released on VHS. Twister was on this channel when we dropped into college that year. Independence Day, I can remember specifically when we went to orientation, one of the things was like, hey, we have access to the Independence Day film. It hasn't been on VHS yet. It just got in. It was either just leaving theaters. This was summer of 96. Mm-hmm. They were showing the Independence Day film down in such and such quad or whatever. Mm-hmm. They were wanting to get all the kids that were there for orientation to go down and watch it. And I remember sitting there watching it going, holy crap, I'm watching a movie that hasn't been on VHS yet. It was a crazy time before all that stuff. We have it on VHS and we sit down and watch it. There's a point in your life where you wonder if you've become an adult and maybe the things that spoke to you as a kid just aren't going to speak to you anymore. And that's what I thought was happening at this time. And what it really was is it just wasn't a good film. It was such a letdown. After that, I probably watched it accidentally one other time. It might have been on the TV while the kids were watching it or something, but I don't even remember. So our adventure has led to me. I had to watch it twice. I watched it again. I know I watched it sometime last week. And then today, when I was making my notes, I was like, I'm going to go ahead and go through the comic and watch the film at the same time, just so I can make sure I have all the comparison down. Now, that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's not gotten better with age. When you start to realize some of what they were trying to do in this film versus what we had seen in the previous films, it just did not land. It was an attempt at trying to do something that would have been really cool, but unfortunately, it just felt weird. It just did not feel like the Turtles to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to step back. I want to hear about your history, which you kind of already divulged a little bit on a previous episode. Yeah. And then I want to hear about your experience, because I know I follow you on Twitter. I know when you watch movies. So this is your second viewing estimate. And I was about to chime in and go, no, this is your 1.5 estimate or whatever. But anyway, go ahead, man. You got the floor.
Well, I loved the first two movies, and I saw them both in theaters. This one I did not see in theaters for whatever reason. And I remember I wasn't really I guess I'd kind of moved past the Turtles a little bit.
Right.
By the time this came out, I was into comics. I was collecting the comic action figures instead of the Turtle action figures. The X-Men show was on TV, the Batman show. I'd kind of just graduated from the Turtles to more superhero comic book stuff.
Right.
I wasn't as excited about the movie, I guess, but my cousins had rented it, and I was like, I'll give it a shot. I don't remember if I watched the whole thing. This is back in 1993 or maybe early 94. I just remember thinking, man, this is a big step down from the first two. Years later, I bought the 4-pack that has the 3 live action movies and the 2007 CGI movie, and continued to watch all 3 or all 4 of them. I got to the third one and I got about 25 minutes in, and I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and skip this. Most likely I'd seen the first half hour twice, and it was the first time I actually seen the movie from front to start, from start to finish over the last 2 days. I had to split it up into sittings.
You still couldn't do it all the way through.
Honestly, it's not as bad as I remembered. It is bad, but it's more just boring and generic. It's kind of ambitious to do a Ninja Turtle movie set in Japan in the 1600s or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, this is a village. They're in the middle of this war, and there's like 30 guys here. They're fighting a war. And I don't know. The costumes, they didn't use Jim Henson for this movie. They used a cheaper costume place. They don't look as good. And the voice of Splinter they did get, I don't know, I guess he had really hit the skids by this time. Corey Feldman's back as Donatello in the third movie.
That's right.
Right. But yeah, just not very good. I actually think the comic is better. This seems more like an adventure of the week story for the Turtles, than the first two. The first movie was the premiere. It was, they fight Shredder. The Foot Clan is taking over, or is invading New York, basically. The second one, it goes back to their history of the ooze and how they became mutated. This one is just like, oh, they're back in Japan. It seems like it should be a bigger deal, but it feels way smaller than the first two movies.
There's a lot that it's trying to do, and there's a lot that is trying to fit into one film that, man, it's just not Turtles. It is not.
That's another thing. If it's just like an adventure of the week, you can put them in weird situations. But if you're talking about a movie, you want to see a Ninja Turtles story, something that feels like the Ninja Turtles.
You have all these villains that you could pick from that have already run the gamut in the cartoon. Pick something from there.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think really made me go. There are some things that can be a turtle adventure, and I agree with you. I know they did a live action Turtles show.
Oh yeah,
and I haven't seen
the new Next Mutation or whatever.
Yeah.
It's god awful.
Is it really? I've never seen it.
It makes this look like a masterpiece. When I first got streaming Netflix, they had the Next Mutation on there. I was like, I've never seen an episode of this. I should check it out.
Oh boy.
And it's so bad. It's basically Power Rangers with the Ninja Turtles instead of the Power Rangers. And I think they did a crossover episode.
They did. I remember hearing about that. I've never seen it. This is a situation where we've kind of aged out.
Yeah.
I definitely can tell you that I know there is a great history and love that people have for Power Rangers. I'm outside of that circle. I don't hate it. It's just a situation where it's like it landed in an era that I wasn't watching. I wasn't watching Fox or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But
I watched the first season of Power Rangers. I was too old, but I did watch the first season of Power Rangers and with my cousins around this time. They were really into it. But yeah, then I kind of aged out of it pretty quickly. I was like, I think I'm too old for this.
Just real quick in regards to the movie, you've mentioned Jim Henson's Creature Shop. Now these animatronics are being run by All Effects Company. Yes, they were definitely cheaper. I did learn that Stuart Gillard, who I believe is our director here, he was worried about retreading ground for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so he didn't want to go back to the same old well.
Yeah.
So he did go and talk to Eastman and Laird about this, and I believe there was some inspiration from the comics. You might have read this arc, I don't know, but apparently Michelangelo accidentally time traveled back into Japan in the comics and was spending some time there before he was brought back. My understanding is that might have been an inspiration for this. Mm-hmm. The movie has new characters. Everybody's got to learn about our main villain, Walker. His arms dealing, which is just a weird thing to be thrown into a Turtles movie, but he's an arms dealer who's trying to get gold from Lord Norinaga. And just like you said, there's a war going on between the villagers and the Empire of Norinaga, whatever.
They don't spend too much time going into the details of the conflict.
No, there's just another way to get some fights on the screen. In the movie, and I'm pointing these things out because as I was watching the movie, I'm making notes. There is a point, and I don't know if you saw this or not, but Splinter is sitting behind it. I know I sent you this. I said, when you see Splinter, you think you're at Chuck E. Cheese. It is that bad. He is up there playing an instrument, and he's going to sing something.
A lot of it is, the place, he's basically in a window, so you're just seeing him from the chest up.
Right.
He could just as easily be behind a drum set.
Yeah. There's a point where...
It's a new voice actor, too, on Splinter, which is...
Yes.
It just sounds weird.
Yeah, you can tell. There's a point where he's talking to one of the turtles, I believe. It's either one of the turtles or Casey. And by the way, Elias Koteas has returned as Casey Jones.
And perplexingly, as a British spy in the past.
Which, I've got to say, just as far as acting chops go, his Casey Jones and Wit, I think is the spy's name. Mm-hmm. Two totally different people, that's for sure. He is portraying as probably one of the better actors out of here. I will give some credit to Walker, the guy who plays Walker. I think I have his name.
He's all right.
He's all right too.
I know him from Lethal Weapon 3 mostly.
Yeah, I was going to say he's got credits in Lethal Weapon. Back to Splinter though. There's a point where he's talking to some character, and if you watch it, it is a 5-second loop. I am not kidding. He talks, raises his hand for a quick. No, he's got his hand in front of him, and he talks, and you see him lower his hand, and then it reverses, and he brings his hand back up. They're trying to pass it off,
right?
Like that's him saying that. watched it 3 times. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Movie magic.
Yeah. Not magic enough. We have no Shredder, no additional mutants, no Foot Clan. So again, you could have done something with the Foot Clan here at the very least.
Yeah.
At the very least, you could have done something with the Foot Clan, but they did not. They did not decide to do anything with that. I did go to Turtlepedia fandom, and they said, now again, trusted source, I don't know, but there was, why is it doing that to me? Trivia, there was a banner with an image of Miyamoto Usagi on the set, which if you click on that, character created by Stan Sakai, first appeared, but was popular enough to start his own series, Usagi Yojimbo. There you go. We'll have to find that and see where it's at, because again, might be one more thing I can get to the film. I better double check before I cut and print this podcast. All right, let's get into talking about Casey being back and babysitting and not crushing heads. Already, I'm upset. And Paige Turco, though, Paige Turco does come back as April. Not bad. Before we get into talking about the adaptation versus the film, do you have anything else you would like to say?
Just on Elias Koteas coming back and, not doing much as Casey, really. And I'm wondering if that's why he is playing a character in the past as well, just to give him something to do. If April doesn't point out that he looks like Casey.
I know.
His hair is buzzed short. He's got a beard. Bringing attention to it just makes it even more weird. He could have just been playing a different character and it wouldn't have been a big deal.
You're right. I mean, it's passed off without her pointing it out. You're not going to know.
Right. It makes his heel turn later more of a big deal because you're associating him with the KC or whatever, but that's not good enough reason for me.
Here we go. Let's get started. Let's talk about what our comic adaptation and film, how they compare. This adaptation is very, very faithful. They clearly had the script and the dialogue ready when they did this adaptation. It's pretty faithful. There are a couple of things I'll probably nitpick and point out, but here's our cover. We have the Lord Norinaga on the front here. The Turtles are back in time. That's right. TMNT III. We got the Turtles and April on the front here. Good cover. Lets you kind of know what you're going to get. As we scroll through, we're opening up the same way.
Now, this is the first of these 3 adaptations we're talking about that doesn't have a Mirage version, right? This is the only one that exists.
Well, we have up here Archie Adventure Series, but when you go down on the bottom of the first page, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, the movie, The Turtles Are Back in Time by Mirage Studios.
Oh, okay.
So, but it does say published by Archie Comics.
Maybe Mirage put it together and then it was published by Archie.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, this doesn't have the Mirage artist from the first 2 adaptations. This is a much more cartoony, more like I guess a lot of those Archie TMNT adventures had some of the, I think Jim Lawson, who worked at Mirage, did a lot of the Archie books too, but this looks a little more cartoony than what the previous adaptations did.
Right. Let me look here real quick, because I did not give the creative team for the book. There we go. Let's try that again.
It doesn't give a writer and artist. It just says adapted by Dean Claren and Chris Allan from the screenplay by Stuart Gillard.
That's right, because that happens right in the middle.
It's like 6 pages in.
All right, so we're opening up just like the film does, where it's Kenshin who's on a horse trying to escape the honor guard. The honor guard are chasing him, trying to bring him back to the castle. And then we are in Japan in 1593. The film starts in 1603. There's a weird 10-year difference. And it's Kumano Castle here. In the film, it's Norinaga Castle. I don't know why they chose to change it to 1603. The only thing I can think of is making it a point to be like, it's 400 years. At the time this is released, it's 1993, and there's a 400-year difference. Our setup is a little bit different here because we get a lot of the Norinaga, Kenshin, Walker stuff here at the beginning before we jump into what's happening with the Turtles. Walker shows up and he's delivering his speech about how I've got guns and you give me gold. He's a slimy businessman. Kenshin goes in the adaptation here to find the scroll that shows the Kappa, the demon turtles that are prophesied or were told. I can't remember if they had showed up like years ago.
I think his dad references his ancestors meeting with them, maybe battling them centuries ago.
And he finds the scepter after finding the scroll. After we get the close up of the scroll, we see the turtles holding their weapons. We notice we know it's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then, yes, here we go. Adapted by Dean Clarrain and Chris Allan. Dean Clarrain, by the way, I'm just going to look this up. That's actually a pseudonym for somebody. Hold on a second. Stephen Murphy, which I don't know if you've heard of Stephen Murphy before, but Stephen Murphy wrote, according to the wiki, a comic book writer, editor known for his work with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series. With Michael Zulli. He was co-creator of the critically acclaimed 1980s independent comic The Puma Blues. Murphy also contributed to as Dean Clarrain, also contributed to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic strip, which ranged from 1990 to 1997. Mighty Mutanimals is listed here, so it says he united several of the series' recurring characters as a separate team, the Mighty Mutanimals. Murphy wrote the majority of his work on TMNT Adventures under the name Dean Clarrain.
Considered him.
Yeah, let's see if they even give an explanation. I do not see anything. That's an interesting question, though. From the screenplay by Stuart Gillard, inks Brian Thomas with John D'Agostino, colors by Barry Grossman, that name we've heard, letters by Mary Kelleher. All right, New York City. New York City. That's right. We hit New York City. We're pretty much in the Turtle era. Things are lining up with the film here. We got a big training session at the beginning of this where the guys are training, fighting back and forth, having a good time until Raphael, in his, bullish way, he's upset about something, throws his sai into the speaker, which is, I don't think the Turtles are have the, let's just say I don't think they're generating too much income. That's my guess. So, to go and destroy your stereo is probably not a good idea.
You have to depend on April to.
Raph is upset. And the reason why he's upset, which I don't know if I picked this out in the film or not, but he's upset. He says, why are we doing this day after day, practicing, killing ourselves for what? Nobody appreciates us. Now, that's a theme that you could see in the comic pretty easy. I don't know if it translates as well over in the film. I do know.
Yeah, picked up on it. Maybe he said it, and I just wasn't paying attention, but I don't
right.
That.
You can understand why, as they go back in time, they make some of the decisions they do, especially towards the end. April shows up. She has the magic egg timer, as she calls it, the antique Japanese egg timer, which she pulls out. And lo and behold, Kenshin's holding it 400 years in the past. April's holding it 400 years in the future. And the egg timer spins. The scepter spins and transports both April and Kenshin. Does the time swap. So we have Kenshin in place of April right now, and April is back in the past. I'm going to wait to get into the time travel physics here, but I just, there's some stuff that bother me. And this is one of those things. Anyway, okay. So Kenshin is now obviously, he's taken aback by the fact that he is 400 years in the future. He's surrounded by turtles and a rat. He believes they are demons because he had just seen that scroll talking about the Kappa. The turtles are trying to figure out, okay, what happened? Where's April? April, back in the past, has to deal with the fact that, oh, hey, I'm now in feudal Japan. She's trying to get her bearings. Her Walkman goes off, which is playing the Barrio Boys. We have the humorous situation where the Japanese soldiers grab their swords and destroy the Walkman. Norinaga believes she's a witch, thinks that she's captured her son. And of course, Walker's like, look, man, she ain't a witch. Confronts her. She claims, yes, I am a witch. By golly, I'll turn you into a puddle of puke. And Walker doesn't believe
he ain't buying it.
He is not buying it.
I was going to say one thing that when Raph's kind of talking about not being appreciated or whatever, something that I don't think they say in the movie that makes sense, but I never really thought about it. Leo says, it'll get better. And Raph's response is, yeah, when? We live to be 500, you know. Like, man, yeah, turtles do live a long time.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's the last Ronin recently that's set in the future, but they could do a turtle story set, 300 years in the future, and they're still around.
Right. They do live a long time. And of course, if they went back in the past, I wonder if they would run into the. Yeah, they would. All right. So Donatello's got to be his nerdy self. He's got to explain what happened, because they've got a theory as to what's caused April to be replaced by this guy. And of course, they figure out that Kenshin he is from the past. Therefore, Donatello comes up with the space-time continuum theory, taking into account equal mass displacement. Hey, we get a panel here that is, I mean, it mentions Michael J. Fox. It mentions Doc. Like that. So I have an issue with the mass displacement thing. At what point are all four of these guys going to be grabbing the scepter again to send the Turtles back in time? Watching the movie again today, and I think reading the comic, it sort of makes sense, because there's a battle that happens and the honor guard all have their hands on the scepter, which apparently brings them luck. So that is sort of okay, but I don't know. It's just too unique, and like we only have 60 hours to get back, which
doesn't. The end game did it better.
I agree. So as we proceed forward here, I'm looking at my notes and looking at the comic at the same time. There has to be some weight displacement, which is kind of weird. Like it has to be the same weight. And I'm like, don't even say that. Like you did not even need to say that. You're just making things even more muddy. All right. So they're on a time constraint. They finally figure out, okay, let's grab the scepter. Let's see if we can head back. Luckily though, we called in Casey. So Casey is here. And he is not going to go back with them, though. He is going to help Splinter. It's very interesting. Again, it's just subtle differences. They're like, hey, we are going to leave you here, Casey. I hope you're okay with that. You need to watch out for Splinter. Keep an eye on Kenshin. We need somebody we can trust. In the movie, Elias looks over and he's mad at first. And then he sees Splinter give him the eyeball. He's like, oh, yes, it would be an honor. You sort of don't have that here. But anyway, again, just small, subtle differences. Mm-hmm. Scepter is going wild after they get a hold of it. There's a Star Trek reference, which is great, where we get a couple of splash pages, and this is like one of the first, if I remember correctly. This is the second one. The first one is them fighting, and then they all grab a hold of the scepter, which is pretty cool. Mikey with his jams on.
You like the jams.
Cannot.
And the Japanese warriors who come back in their unique underwear is quite a sight in the movie and the comic. But
again, the turtles are naked. They actually say that in the movie at one point. One of them says something like, I cannot remember, but I just remember one of the turtles going, we're naked. How are the honor guard coming through with underwear on then?
But and for some reason, the one that takes Mikey's place, apparently he was naked. Because he's not wearing the Japanese.
Yeah, right.
Jams on.
Oh, geez. All right. So anyway,
I guess we're looking a little too closely.
Yeah, we are.
In us.
We are. Okay. So we get a Star Trek reference. Beam me up, Scotty. That's pretty funny. Do we get subtitles? Things are very faithful. The honor guard, they transpose, time swap. They're now in New York City, while the turtles get transported into the honor guard outfits back in 1593, according to this.
I wonder if they decided when they were making the movie, instead of going to ancient Japan, set it in an era where they're trading with the British, so there's not going to be any subtitles. Kids don't have to read the subtitles. People are speaking English. Let's keep it simple.
That's really what it was. The point of the subtitles that I was wondering, because every once in a while there was a bit of Japanese being spoken. After this whole moment where they are transported back in time, they're in the midst of the battle. Mikey gets separated and the turtles get thrown off their horseback. Mikey ends up getting knocked out. He is attacked by one of the villagers, I believe. Mitsu's there, and she's kind of running over to Mikey to find out. Now, I don't think she says any of this right here. She is definitely not, we don't know what she's thinking.
Yeah.
When she sees him, she says, Kappa, but he fell as easily as a man. It makes sense as to why she tells the other people to hold off, because she doesn't believe he's a demon. And she says it here. I think in that moment in the movie, she just yells some Japanese and you don't know what she's saying. Right. At least I couldn't see. I didn't have subtitles. Now, I can't remember if there were subtitles that popped up at all on your end. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't have any.
So she's telling the villagers, fear not, he's not a demon. Well, now she knows they're not a demon. All right. So Mitsu grabs Mikey, takes her back to the village. The scepter is lost, but appears to be picked up by somebody. We don't know who that is. Back to the turtles, who have decided to go to Noranaga Castle in the honor guard garb. We see them infiltrate the castle, trying not to be seen. I think they're looking for April at this point. There are two big differences. All right. And it's all about Niles. It's all about wet willies. There are no wet willies whatsoever in the comic book adaptation. The wet willy gag in the movie is over the top, but at the end it pays off because he just
come back around with it. Yeah.
I really like that. But anyway, we get Niles in here, who seems to be more of a side character. And I understand we've got a comic book here. We can't make everybody a main character, but Niles definitely gets more play in the film than he does in the comic.
When I was watching the movie, Niles and the Japanese dungeon master guy, who they scare and he gets in the cage to hide from them, those guys in particular, and maybe some other characters, like all of those antics really reminded me of Three Ninjas. The bad guys, just goofballs that were there for jokes. They were supposed to be kind of threatening, but they really weren't a threat. They were just screwing up.
In 93, the Turtles were so huge. Martial arts was so huge. We were trying to make it appeal to all ages.
Yeah, ninjas became a huge deal in the 80s, and that's when the Ninja Turtles were created. It's based mostly off Frank Miller's Daredevil stuff with the hand and all that. There was a series of movies called American Ninja.
Yep.
Ninjas were just kind of lousy for the better part of 15 years until the pretty much, I guess, Surf Ninjas is when it was kind of.
Oh my gosh! Jeezy criminy. That was Rob Schneider in that one. Is that right?
I never actually.
I've seen the. All right. So they go down and find April. They do not give a wet willy to Niles. He escapes wet willyless, I guess. I don't know if that's the right term, but anyway, Niles gets a pail of water dumped on his head. They rescue April. They also rescue Wit, who is Elias Koteas's character, and they escape down a sewer. All again, very faithful to the film. Dialogue is almost the exact same. Obviously not the age of chivalry as Wit makes his way down the sewer. I just got to say, them landing at the bottom of the sewer. Look, I know it's a pond, but I know what a sewer is too.
Yeah, and I was going to point out the big scene where they slide down with it looks like snow.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was originally a different color and they were like, this is too gross, guys. In my notes, I put white mud ? Just thinking of the black sheep. Yeah, we're going to be really rich too, because we're going to be the first people who've ever discovered white mud. Them sliding down, I mean, that's a shit tunnel, but it looks like snow or suds or something.
Right. Okay. All right. So there were jokes in the comic that the film was definitely pulling. Sometimes some better jokes were used. I say better, to each his own. Your mileage may vary, but help, I'm a turtle and I can't get up is not in the comic, which should have been. I mean, I would have laughed.
I don't think I noticed that in the movie when I watched that.
Yeah.
Honestly, 1993 is a little late to be making I've fallen and I can't get up.
I'll agree with you there. There were a lot of one-liners. My guess is there had to have been a lot of ad-libbing, because if they're trying to be faithful to the script, I would have thought they would include that joke in the comic, but there's other stuff that is straight lifted from the script. You can tell. So no, I'm a turtle and I can't help. I'm a turtle and I can't get up. Things are very
I don't think it's in the movie. In the comic, they're asking for the honor guard, and one of the turtles, I guess it's Donatello, says, "Oh, Spaghetti-O." I'll bet you that's us. And I was like, isn't it Spaghetti-O?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's Spaghetti-O.
All right.
Spaghetti-O. Oh boy. All right. Well, that's a new one.
Favorite joke from the movie and the comic that absolutely should not be in either is when April's giving herself some more leg room, ripping the legs off of her outfit, and Leo and Raph are going swing.
Yes.
Giving us a Wayne's World boner joke.
Yes, it is. We continue as we go down through here. We get the environmental message that we sort of just subtle. One little thing here where Raph notices the stream is free of trash, and they love the fact that it's, it's beautiful.
No litter, no no radioactive waste. No, I forget what all they say. No dead bodies, I think, is one thing they mention. But yeah, kind of enjoying nature desecrated by man. That's a thing that I don't know if we talked about this on any of the pods or just in the chat that me, you, and Evan had, that like the Turtles Archie books, there was a lot of environmental messaging in those, like especially in the Mutanimals, it was really heavy-handed, which is fine. You're trying to teach kids to care about the environment. So that's probably a little pet thing that Dean Clarion, or whatever his real name is probably passionate about and was trying to push into some of these books.
Like I said, the Turtles 2 movie, the soundtrack was really heavy into saving the environment. Now we get into Turtles 3, we get a small environmental message, which is, I'm not going to complain about it. If you're able to go back in time 400 years, this is probably one of the first things you notice, how clean and clear the water is going to be.
Right.
Okay.
So many chemicals in the air. What's going on?
At this point, the rebels attack. The rebels make their attack on the Turtles in April, thinking they're the same, that they're the honor guard. But no, turns out, they take their masks off. They show them, no, we're Turtles. And of course, everybody's yelling Kappa. Demon, demon, demon.
Yeah.
Now, it's at this point in the film versus the comic, the fight scene between the Turtles and the rebels is what we'll call them. It's a lot longer. It goes on for a lot longer. And in the comic, it's just a page. Like they reveal themselves.
It seemed like that was a thing in the second adaptation we talked about too, where there was a big fight scene that got really condensed down for.
I think it was that scene where they fought in the lab. So yeah, it's pretty much the same thing here. They reveal themselves. Mitsu's there and sees that the Turtles match Mikey, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we have the other one." And so they knew that she's talking about Mikey. Right at the end of that page, her village is on fire. The Walker's men are attacking the village.
When Mikey gets released from captivity, that was my favorite joke in the book, when he says, "My heroes." Let me see if I can pull it up here. He says, Hey, I'm really a beautiful princess trapped in a turtle's body. Break the spell. Give me a kiss." As they run away in terror. I thought that was pretty funny. That was my favorite gag in the comic.
Yeah. Yeah. Walker, and I don't know if I have it written down here. I'm looking here just to see. Walker's a really strange kind of villain when you think about it. At the end of the movie, he's going to make a decision with Norinaga to kill everybody. The first time that he draws this weapon is when he stops Norinaga from hurting his son with a sword. He fires and hits the bell as Norinaga draws his sword. And then in this village part, Walker is like, fire above their heads. Now, he doesn't say that in the comic. He just, you watch them, they're raising this village. But in the movie, he's like, fire above their heads. So he doesn't want to kill anybody, it seems like. And I don't know if that's because the kids aren't going to pick up on this.
You kill them, they can't pay you later. They're going to need guns eventually.
These are possible customers. The rebel attacks much longer in the movie. They make friends, cut right to the village on fire. Raph saves Mikey in the comic. Mikey is about to get shot. It's different. Mikey's sitting there. This is the whole, don't you know Westerns dead? Westerns are dead.
Right.
Walker grabs his pistol and he's got it pointed at Mikey. And Niles has a gun pointed at Mikey as well. And the Turtles take out his two buddies and give him a wet willy. It causes him to shoot the gun in the air, knocking Walker's cap off, saving Michelangelo from getting shot. That's the difference. In the book, Raphael makes the same. Yeah. Again, the Niles wet willies. Come on. Okay. Now things continue here where Yoshi's in the burning building. Michelangelo goes in to make the save. We get a full page splash of Michelangelo looking for Yoshi. There he is laying on the ground. He saves Yoshi, comes out of there. This is the dialogue. I think it's just funny that Leo decides to make a Fire Marshal Bill reference. That is not.
That was. There's other references in that. Like at one point, Michelangelo, I think when they first show up, references Shogun, which that's a newer TV show, but it's a remake of a show from the 70s or early 80s. I never would have got that in 1993, but there's a lot of references to different stuff.
So movie continues. The turtles are hailed as heroes. The villagers respect them. There are some things that are out of order that happened in the comic versus the movie. But one thing that was definitely left out of the comic versus the movie, there's this relationship sort of or tension between April and Wit. There's just like, I'm just going to put this in quotes. It's not what it is. It's not a shower scene because that makes it sound way more adult, but you know, she's just kind of washing herself off with water, and he comes over and he's like, "Hey, I want to go back with you guys." And that's a complexity that the movie had, but the comic didn't. And I think they did a good, that makes things a little bit more complex than it needs to be. And it's just a comic. It's an Archie comic, for crying out loud. But, you know, I think if they would have kind of left that out of the movie a little bit, but just like you said, the heel turn at the end that we're going to get, I don't know. Just kind of point out that whole scene where she's washing herself off and having a conversation with Wit is left out of this. We get a panel of it. Yeah. There's no dialogue whatsoever. Mikey and Mitsu. Mikey has a thing for Mitsu.
That was kind of weird. He had crushes on April as well in different times.
He asked her to dance, which is very strange. And she's like, no, that's not permitted. And then his brothers give him a whole lot of crap for it, which is pretty funny. Cut back to New York City. Casey's dealing with our honor guard. Kenshin throws a coffee cup. Casey's like, maybe you should try herbal. And for a second, I was like, this is a drug reference. But no, I think he's making a caffeine reference here. In the movie, there's a point where he's trying to teach the guys. There's the honor guard's all riled up, and Casey grabs his stick and the guitar hits. And you're like, oh man, he is ready to want to get a fight scene finally. And then he reaches down and grabs the remote and turns the TV on. They watch the honor guard watch hockey. That was fun. You don't give me hopes that Casey's going to get into a fight and just yank it away from me. Walker and Nobunaga continue to talk. He wants gold for his guns. Even faced with demons, he's still a businessman. It doesn't matter. He is going to get money or gold for his guns. He's very manipulative too. Donnie plans to make the time scepter after he learns about how they've lost the time scepter. So he wants to create one. This is all in the film and in the comic. A Frisbee pizza hits one of the turtles, not the blacksmith. Again, small change, no big deal. We see where Raph has his moment with Yoshi.
Yeah.
This is interesting because Raph is like the hothead of the group and he's watching these kids. Like this was, as a kid, this was me on the playground, moving around, acting like I was a Ninja Turtle. Raph, the one guy who's always a hothead, always ready for a fight. And he has this moment with Yoshi where he's like, you shouldn't be fighting. You should be playing, which, it's interesting that it's him that's saying that, and kind of feeds into a little bit of growth of Raph, I guess.
Seeing himself in this kid.
Yeah, exactly. Nobunaga tells Walker the dungeons are crowded, so Walker is just going to kill everyone. We do have our moment with Mikey and Mitsu where he finds out that she's kind of sweet on Kenshin, and he's like, we'll try and get him back. Very faithful to the movie. We continue. We're going through the movie and the comic are lining up. There is one thing in the movie that is not in the comic, and that is Walker's bird obsession. He makes a couple bird references in the comic, but he has a bird obsession in the movie. To the point where it's a joke at the very end, right before he dies. So it's funny because that definitely comes up. All right. We have a situation where Mikey's upset with Mitsu because Raph had ended up finding the scepter after he went to go visit Yoshi. Yoshi gave him the scepter, and Mikey believes that Mitsu was hiding the scepter to keep them there so they could fight with the villagers against Nobunaga. So Mikey accuses her of, hey, doing something bad, and they want to leave. It turns out the grandfather is the one that did it. Again, all this stuff that's in the movie. Wit grabs Mitsu, takes her hostage, takes off. There's your heel turn. Takes off to the castle and says, I think he grabs a scepter as well. They still believe, or at least a lot of these people believe, that Kenshin is hiding somewhere. Nobunaga is Kenshin's father. Lord Nobunaga is Kenshin's father. And clearly there's some bad blood. He's in love with Mitsu, who's the head of these band of rebels. So we got this love story that's kind of going on here, but they all still think that Kenshin is there. They don't realize that he is not. He is in the future, but Wit's like, bring Kenshin and meet me back at the castle because you don't want to be here the next day. Because at that point they know, and I think the villagers know as well, that Norinaga and Walker are coming to raid the village. So Wit's got his heel turn. He grabs Mitsu, heads back to the castle. So they go to the castle. Wit is there and he shows Walker that he has the scepter. I think he does this on the book or on the boat in the comic book. But anyway, he's like, hey, I've got the scepter. And Norinaga views this scepter as like this thing that will help them. It helps them win battles. It's this supernatural object he believes has some type of power. And he's wanting to get the scepter back as well. The turtles get into the castle and look to free Mitsu. There is a fight that happens where they actually cut the whole April and Wit and Walker confrontation from the book. There's a moment where she runs in and she's just giving Wit the business. That's not even in the comic book. Again, I don't think it was needed. The turtles get into the castle. They free Mitsu. We get fight scenes galore. They run in to this one room and find the scroll. They're amazed to see that they're on this scroll. Then Norinaga and his men show up, and Mitsu is like, she's ready to throw down, and so is Norinaga. They both draw weapons, and they're about to go at it. One of them is going to die, and one of them is going to die with honor, or something along those lines. And as she's leaping towards Norinaga, Mikey is jumping in there and between them and stopping them from fighting. He actually tackles Mitsu before Norinaga can strike her down. This is where it gets kind of violent. Because
in the movie, the sword just clangs off his shell, right?
Yeah, he stops. He grabs his chucks and throws them up before Mitsu can come down with the blade. I think it's Mitsu because he stops her and he's got his back turned. One of Norinaga's guards comes up with a sword and hits him in the back, and it just bounces off the shell. In the book, though, like when he swings at Mitsu, he like full on clips, and I don't know. It looks like it cuts his arm, maybe.
Yeah,
Michelangelo's arm, and he's on the ground. It's shadowed, and there's blood on the ground, and he's holding himself. I think as far as the comic goes versus the movie, I'd rather this happen. This brings it into the realm of, okay, you've done something to hurt our heroes. It's not a joke. It's not he who dings the shell must pay. We get the big fight scene with the guards versus the turtles and Mitsu. Our confrontation between Norinaga and Leo's a little bit different here. We do not get the haircut gag in the book. Instead, we just jump to dropping the bell on Norinaga's head. As we're rolling in through the final confrontation, I started noticing the comic, like, I think they're starting to realize there's a page count. Things are really speeding up and stuff is getting cut. Walker shows up, plans to shoot him. This is just like in the movie. Wit gets put in the group because he speaks up for them. And he's like, how about you go out there and join them? Wit gets thrown into the group as well. Leo does this whole thing where he's like, well, you think you're so big and bad, Walker. Why don't you shoot us yourself and not have all your men shoot us instead? He unloads the cannon at Leo, who ducks his head into his shell. The cannonball then hits the bell. Walker, I don't know why it took Leo ducking his head into his shell to be like, holy crap, these are demons. Like, if I saw a 5.5 foot turtle running around with weapons, that's going to do it for me.
He couldn't have thought those were costumes.
That's no way. Dude.
1603 or whatever.
Cannonball hits the bell. Walker's finally scared of the demons. Walker takes off. In the movie, we finally get our Wet Willie joke that pays off, where Niles licks both of his fingers and sticks them in his own ears and then runs away. Wet Willie, and then runs away, scared to death. I'm sorry. The Wet Willie jokes, I thought they were great. I thought it was a way to pay it off. All right. Turtles pursue Walker, who does not stop to get his birds. His birds are no concern in the comic whatsoever. Walker throws the scepter. Mikey catches it with the help of his brothers, which is exactly what happens in the movie. Wit takes out Walker with a trebuchet. Am I using the right term there?
Sure.
And he falls into this. And Walker, oh my goodness. Well, I mean, let's just put this panel up against what happens in the film, which has to be.
In the TMNTpedia, I think is where I saw that Walker's death has been a subject of much derision because of how comical it is in the movie.
Oh my gosh. I think even in 96, I wasn't paying attention to the movie that much, but that part in the film has to be, it's got to be top 5 like worst. There's some pretty bad ones out there, but it's got to be up there in worst death scenes. Essentially, he just drops from the cliffside, falling into the ocean below, but there's like no splash. They disappears. He's just gone. He's teleported. Let's do a TMNT 4. And Krang has teleported Walker from his death before he dies. I would pay money to read that comic. So Walker, we have one panel of him falling down, which is way better than what we get even in the movie. Back in New York City, back in the future, Kenshin's ready to go. Casey's trying to gather up the other guys, and in the film and in the comic, we get a 90s knot. I am so glad we did. The Honor Guard. The Honor Guard have learned a few things that they are going to be taken back to the 1600s, and I am so glad for that. Mikey and Raph decide they don't want to go back to the future. It's not touched on as much in the film as it is here, but Mikey does, like when Mitsu comes in, she's like, hey, I wanted to say goodbye. Mikey's like, me and Raph aren't going.
Okay.
What's interesting in the book, though, is that it becomes Mikey, Raph, and then Leo. Leo doesn't want to go back either. So it's up to Donatello and April to kind of talk them out of it.
Yeah.
So he wants to stay in the past. They all three want to stay in the past. And Donatello and April are like, no, you can't do this. There's even a whole discussion, which does not happen in the movie, where Mikey, I think, is one that's talking about, or maybe it's Donnie. They're trying to do the mass displacement, and they look over at a statue. And they're like, that statue weighs probably just as much as we do. And I'm just like, just get it out of here. Don't worry about stuff like that. All right. The egg timer starts doing its thing, and the scepter starts doing its thing. And April yells, it's Close Encounters time versus it's Star Trek time in the film. All right. Now, there is a very confusing. Did you catch? I don't know if you caught this while you were looking at the comic, but there is a very confusing bit of panels going on right about here. So we got chaos, right? Everybody's trying to rush to get a hold of the scepter, and the turtles are like, hey, everybody get a hold of the scepter right now. We've got Leo, Donatello, and April. Yoshi runs over to Raph and gives him a hug.
But I think they just miscolored the mask there.
Well, here's the thing. You could maybe make a case that this turtle got over here.
Yeah.
In between, but he even says, like, Yoshi's, and that's the first thing I thought too. I was like, oh, they just miscolored it. But, the Yoshi goes, I will never forget you, Raphael, son, while he is hugging him. And then he kind of leans up. This yellow or this orange colored mask is sitting here on the same turtle.
Yeah.
So now they're yelling at Mike to get over there. Just a little bit of confusion when they were the script versus what was happening in the comic. Right. All of a sudden, his brothers and April disappear, and Michelangelo is waiting back in the 1600s. He's all alone, just like in the movie. We fast forward to the time swap in New York City sewers in 1993. The Honor Guard still sitting there holding the scepter that Michelangelo was supposed to be there, and he's not. Splinter's freaking out. And then with one panel, this is so drawn out in the film. In one panel, the swap is made, and Michelangelo makes his way back. So yeah, in the film, it's drawn out.
We get one panel of tension.
Yeah, one panel. All right, and then we are I think on our last page here.
Yeah,
it's definitely different when Kenshin gets back. In the film, it's Lord Norinaga, who's been a bad guy this whole time,
in a real butthole. When
he sees that Kenshin is back, he bows down, and Norinaga does not want anything. It's different here. Kenshin shows back up, and it's Kenshin that bows. The good thing is Norinaga says, my son, welcome home. Like, all that's been wiped away pretty in the book. I like the fact that the film shows that Norinaga is very complacent and respects his son more than what we have here. Then we get to Mikey, who at the end of the film is kind of depressed. He needs some cheering up. He's relying on one more Splinter funny to maybe
be the worst Splinter funny by a long stretch.
After watching the film, it's so funny because this morning I watched like the second half of the film as I was making my notes, and then I went back and watched the first half, and I didn't realize that they were actually paying a joke off from the very beginning of the film. And when Mikey gets that lamp and he puts it on his head, and he goes, oh, starts acting like Elvis. And then, when Splinter does it, it didn't even occur to me, oh yeah, he's referencing that until I watched it backwards today.
I didn't pick up on that either.
Mikey's a bit depressed at the end of the film. And then his brothers kind of show up and cheer him up. And we got some Tektronic. Can't remember the name. Tektronic. We get some music in the background that's playing, and the guys are dancing and they cheer Mikey up. So that's great. But in the book, boy, oh boy, do things go quick. Mikey's not depressed. He has one more. He says, now I can't remember if this is exactly said in there, but Splinter looks at him and says, Michelangelo, something else deeply troubles you, my son. And what is it? And Michelangelo goes, where's the pizza?
That's not all.
Oh, wait. We get Bart Simpson. Bart Splinter makes an appearance, and we get ay caramba. There you go. One more Splinter funny for the road. All right. So that is our comparison. The minutia of stuff that I have pulled from the film versus this comic book adaptation is probably, gosh, I'm glad I did it. But if somebody ever asked me if I did it, I don't know.
Definitive account.
We do. It is there. Anything else that you had in your notes that you wanted to point out?
I pretty much covered everything that I had notes on. One more thing I'll say about the art. Dean Clarion was, I'm assuming, the writer. So the artist was...
I know we had Grossman on... Grossman was on colors, and then...
Chris Allan. Allan. I like his art style, and most of it is workmanlike, for lack of a better term. Just getting the story across. Not a lot of embellishment. It is interesting that he draws the turtles' heads and faces pretty similar to what the animatronics look like in the movies.
Yeah.
Gives them the big teeth and stuff. So that looks cool. The big splash pages where he really gets to show off are really cool and a little more detailed. I like those quite a bit.
I agree.
And I've never heard of Chris Allan. I don't know what else he's done, but I do think he's really solid, and I like some of those big panels a lot.
Yeah. All right. You want to pick one? Pick a panel?
Yeah, I'll go with one of those big splashes, which there are probably, 5 or 6, maybe more of those. Full page splashes. My favorite one is the Michelangelo rescuing the kid from the fire.
That's a good one.
That's page 32.
So this is what it must feel like being a marshmallow. Yeah, I was either going to go with that one, or I was taking the very first splash page that we get, where I think it's the very first one. They're doing the training. Yeah. That's all 4 turtles right there throwing hands.
That is a great panel, or a great shot. Did you notice Donatello's battle cry there or whatever?
How you doing?
Yeah.
Perfect. Last bit and we're out of here. I promise. I promise. I have to, because I've done my due diligence in listening to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 soundtrack. Let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen because we don't need to do that anymore. Are you ready, Chris? Are you ready to learn a little something about the...
I cannot wait.
Okay, so the TMNT soundtrack, one of the most minimum effort soundtracks I've ever heard in my entire life. And I'm about to explain why. Track 1, Tarzan Boy. You probably remember it from the film. They're dancing to it in the bar. The Honor Guard are dancing to it in the bar at one point. This is a song...
Shades of JCVD and Bloodsport.
Tarzan Boy by Baltimore is a song from 1985. It was a pretty popular song. I remember hearing it on the radio as a youngster. It was fun to see it in the movie. Tarzan Boy by Baltimore. That's track 1. Track 2, Can't Stop Rockin' by ZZ Top. This is another one from 1985. Another ZZ Top track in the third of a trilogy that has time travel in it, which is a little bit, I'm used to Back to the Future 3, where the ZZ Top guys are spinning their guitars. We have them here in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. And I do love me some ZZ Top. I'm a fan. Track 3, Rockin' Over the Beat by Technotronic. Okay. Now, Chris, when I tell you that this is legit like a pre-production track where somebody just started saying lyrics and they had a concept of a song and then just decided, well, I'm just going to do the rest of the song with these same lyrics, and then I'll touch it up later. And then later never comes. This is one of the most repetitive songs I've heard ever. And Ya Kid K is in this. She's been on all three.
Oh, really?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles soundtracks. Ya Kid K has had a song or been involved in some type of song. I think this is the first time Technotronic was credited, and then it said featuring Ya Kid K, but her voice is very distinct with the Technotronic stuff. It is the same lyrics almost over and over again, and it really wears on you a little bit, but it's Technotronic, so you can kind of forgive them. Then we have a cover by the Barrio Boys doing Conga, which is a Miami Sound Machine song. This is the this is the song that is going through April's headphones when
the demons are in the little box.
You're right. She shrunk them all down there. It ain't bad because they bust out some classic 90s rap. This is the dark horse winner of the soundtrack. Track number 5, Loose Bruce with the Turtle Jam. I looked this up. Turtlepedia had it listed as Psychedelic Dust and Loose Bruce performing this song. This is my favorite song off the soundtrack, and a lot of it is because I love it when my rappers make billions of pop culture references in their song. I don't even think this is featured in the movie. If it is, it's a very quick snippet that I didn't catch. He makes a ton of references, and there's a group called Das Effects, which I don't know if you've ever heard of them. But they had an album that comes out in 1993 called Straight Up Suicide. Suicide spelled SEWASIDE. Straight out the sewer. Straight out the sewer. And they do the same thing. They're very well known for their raps laden with pop culture references and Thundercats stuff. I mean, it's just fun. Anyway, Loose Bruce, Chef's Kiss. 06, track 6. We have the Definition of Sound doing a song called Fighter. If you listen to that track and you don't go to bed and wake up with fighter, 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 it is annoying and in abundance. We'll just put it that way. Track 7 is probably the most traditional song on here. It is a instrumental piece called Yoshi's Theme by Durang She is what we'll go with there. It has when that hut's on fire and the turtles run into it, you can hear Yoshi's theme playing at that point. And then that's it. Because the next 3 tracks I'm going to tell you are we've ran out of ideas for this soundtrack, because track number 8 is Turtle Power by Partners in Crime.
Oh yeah.
Now bring it back. I'm excited. You're excited. We love Partners in Crime, but they hit track 7 and they're like, what the hell do we do? Partners in Crime was a big hit. Okay. But they're not in New York anymore. They're not going up against the Foot Clan. That's all right. Throw it on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 soundtrack. So they made a decision and they put it on there. I can't hate them for it because it's Partners in Crime doing Turtle Power, but it has nothing to do with this movie. Absolutely nothing. By the way, you should see people lose their minds on YouTube when this track hits and they're like, how? This isn't Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And some guy has to come on there and go, well, actually, when you look at the soundtrack, yes, they put it on there. And then track 9, oh, get ready, because it is a remix of Tarzan Boy. We are going back to track 1 and remixing it. So it's on there twice. Tarzan Boy is on there twice, essentially. Tarzan Boy is brought to the 90s a little bit. And then track 10 is Rockin' Over the Beat remix. It's the same track that we got from Technotronic in track 3. So they remixed that one and put it back on there. So we got Turtle Power, Partners in Crime, and then 2 of the same songs that were already played on this soundtrack, just remixed. So back in the 90s, though, you might be aware, but they used to love to remix songs. And then you would get an album with 3 remixes of the same song. We're just getting into that phase. But regardless, that's it. 10 tracks, 7 original. Well, I can't even say 7 original songs because Conga is a cover. If we just got a lot of rapping in it, it was something else. I listened to the soundtrack quite a few times. It takes you back to the 90s. I can tell you that much. It definitely gets a little repetitive. So you don't ever have to listen to the soundtrack. I'll just tell you that much.
Well, that's a relief.
Chris Armstrong, we have spent over an hour. Oh my gosh, going on 2 hours.
We're going to be going 4 hours of Turtle
Dude, I will tell you that I would not have wanted to do it with anybody else. Glad you got to join me. Let's go ahead. I don't have anything else here. We can get into plugs. I don't know what would be next to continue this theme as far as the Turtles and adaptations go, but I've not looked. I don't know if there's an adaptation of the 2007 one.
I think that there would be, but I don't know. I'm not certain about that.
We may look. If I haven't killed this concept with this insanity of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, then maybe we might come back again at some point with another adaptation.
Be back to Turtles one way or the other. And we know
you damn right. You were damn right. All right, let's get into plugs. What do you got to plug?
I've got 2 other podcasts I do with my buddy AJ, both movie podcasts. One called Small Screeners, where we talk about direct-to-video and made-for-TV movies, and another called Because Movies, where we talk about whatever movie stuff we feel like. Both have been on hiatus pretty much all year. Maybe by the time this comes out, there'll be some new episodes out, but we have a catalog of several, I think of like 50 episodes on Small Screeners and 20 or so on Because Movies, including episodes on The Punisher movie from 1990, the DC New Frontier animated movie, Batman Under the Red Hood animated movie. So there's some comic book movie stuff on those feeds you can find on your podcatcher of choice.
All right. Love it. All right. Yeah. As for myself, if you're listening to this right now, you're either listening on YouTube or on your podcatcher of choice. This is the Unspoken Issues podcast, part of the Source Material Comics feed. There you go. So we have this podcast here where we focus on 90s comics, and then we have the Source Material Comics podcast, which just focuses on comics of any era. And then we also have the Marvel Snap, the Snap Material podcast, where myself and Evan Bemmons get together and we discuss Marvel Snap. Just recorded a few episodes with him, and that should be releasing here for the month of May. And that's it. We are going to get out of here. So that over there is Chris Armstrong. I'm Jesse Starcher. How are you sending this one out, Chris?
Swing!
Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.